Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical, and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
Welcome to A Coffee with Karen. So today our show is a weekly show, a cup of positivity with just a sprinkling of woo-woo. So every week I have guests giving their perspective on either a mental, a physical, or a spiritual perspective, or any combination of the above. A holistic approach, I would say, which is pretty much what personally I'm about. Your host is Karen Roberts. I help women who are overstressed, overwhelmed, maybe overweight, underpaid. And I help them come back from that. If you want to check me out, go to KarenRobertsCoaching.com. So today's show is all about caregiver burnout, right? And how to deal with that. So my guest today, Ashley, welcome to the show. If you can share with the listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do, and a little bit about your story, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Karen, for having me. I'm really excited. I love the energy. So, like Karen said, my name is Ashley Jackson, and I reside in Ohio, the U.S., and I am happily married and just loving life, but it wasn't always like that. So I am a caregiver advocate, and making sure that caregivers know that they are not alone, they are seen, and they are heard. And the vehicle that takes me there is my business called Timeless Dream Events, where I put on events, whether it be weddings or showers, celebrations of life for caregivers and their terminally or chronically ill loved ones. And
Wow.
Yeah, and actually, Karen, just 3 days ago on June the 18th, I had a book launch. So now I'm an author as well.
Congratulations, a published
Thank
author. Well
you.
done. What is the name of your book?
Yes, it's called Lost, Travel, Found, and it's basically my grief and healing and caregiver journey all balled up into one book, and just how I have overcome caregiver burnout and helping other caregivers in the same way, and just basically my caregiver journey with my husband. So, which brought me to my business. My pain became my purpose, which, saying it seems kind of weird, but so many people, have birthed businesses, books, podcasts, radio shows, whatever it be, out of their own pain so that they can help others kind of navigate
100%.
around that, through it.
I would say, I'm going to go out on a limb and say every single one of my guests have started their career based on exactly what you've just said. They've had to overcome some obstacle, whether it was a mental, a physical, or spiritual. It doesn't matter, right? Or a combination of the above. And you're absolutely right. When you heal yourself, a lot of people, the natural next step, or I would hope for a lot of people, would be then to share their story so that they can be an inspiration for others, to help others, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I didn't come to this conclusion overnight. It was hard for me to want to open up, to want to share, because those pain points are so personal, so intimate, vulnerable. You don't want to often peel back those layers like an onion, right? Like you want to just keep it close. Like, I don't know, this is too hard. It can be embarrassing. I've always been seen as the strong one. So if I told my story, people are going to see that I had weak moments. What are they going to think? What are they going to say when they hear this? So.
Isn't that
But
interesting? Isn't that
Yeah.
interesting that the ones that, and there you go, actually, sometimes the ones that appear to be the stronger ones may actually need more help, because quite often, right, we can put a face on it and everything's bright and rosy when everybody could be struggling through. So, Ashley, well, how did this come about, if it's not too painful to share your story here?
Oh, no, I've become more vocal and open about it. So, yeah, absolutely. So, back in March of 2017, my newly engaged fiance found out that he had a rare cancer in stage 4. And when I mean that we were newly engaged, I mean he had proposed to me on January 1st of 2017. And then we found out about this cancer diagnosis on March 28th of 2017. And,
Wow.
Instead of us planning our engagement party, right? Instead of us planning our engagement party, we're having to plan what doctors we're going to have to visit, what hospitals are we going to have to go to. So, it was just like, why is this happening type of thing? We're at the top of the world and now we come crashing down, and just trying to navigate the system, the medical system. I didn't really know what I was doing, but a lot of caregivers could probably relate. Your life changes in a blink of an eye. Most people become a caregiver in seconds. Your life can literally change that quickly, and just trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do now? Where am I supposed to take him? He couldn't work, so I'm the full, I'm working full time as well as taking care of him full time. So I'm cooking, I'm cleaning. I called myself the chauffeur because I'm having to take him to his treatments because he just physically couldn't drive. I'm sitting there with him in the trenches when he's getting the chemo pumped through his body, the radiation, all of the things. And especially women, we tend to put so much on our plate that we forget to put ourselves on the plate. So we get pushed off. We get pushed over to the side. So, I was missing my own doctor's appointments. Anxiety and stress were presenting itself physically for me, and it was just really hard. But I didn't know how to get out of that cycle at first until, it was presented to me like, you're going through caregiver burnout. And I didn't even know what that meant at the time.
Only other caregivers possibly will know what that is, right? You only go through it through experience.
Right. And, burnout is burnout. It's real. But it's something with caregiver burnout, because like with nurses and doctors, in essence, they get to like clock out and go home. Like we did our 12 hours or whatever it is. And all right, I'll see y'all tomorrow. Like, we don't get to do that. I have to wake up. I had to wake up and make sure he was eating properly, because then he's going to be going through 8 hours of chemotherapy and radiation. And then, bringing him home, I'm having to make sure I have enough energy to even get us home, because it's a long drive. I'm tired. I'm not resting because I'm worried about him, and, all the things. And then how that anxiety and stress manifests itself can be very detrimental to your health. So I actually found a statistic that 30% of caregivers pass away before the person that they're caring for, because they're missing their own appointments. they're not taking care of themselves. They're not eating properly. They're not drinking enough water. They're not getting enough rest.
That's a phenomenal statistic,
Yes.
actually, but quite understandable due to the high levels of, like we mentioned, this is another word that's been mentioned over and over and over since I've started this radio show, is high levels of cortisol, right? Stress. You're under an awful lot of emotional stress, physical stress, mental stress, right? And that is all combined, the combination of those is going to have a knock-on effect to your overall health.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah, and anybody can relate to this, but when you have so much stress, you start taking it out on the ones that you love the most. So like, even the simplest things, like if my mom asked me, like, do you want bread or milk? I'd be like, get it, just get it, like, leave me alone. Like, don't ask me one more question, because I'm already having to deal with the 2,500 questions that the doctors or nurses are asking. You just kind of, when I sit and think back on those times, and I still find myself like telling my brother, my mom, close friends, like, I'm so sorry that I even reacted or acted that way. And, none of them took it to heart because they knew I had so much on my plate. But the stress and the burnout can take you places where you don't normally want to, you're normally not there or want to be. So it's just trying to work through that burnout or navigating around it completely is so much more healthier and better for not just you, but your loved ones, especially the ones that you may be taking care of as well.
Yeah, incredible. And you're right. You're so right that a lot of people that maybe be put into this position, have no experience of it. Like you said, that it's been an instant. All of a sudden, you're Ashley doing what you were doing, and now you're Ashley, 24-hour, 7-day-a-week caregiver with no previous experience. I'm going to go out on a limb and presume, right? So you've got to be Superwoman, right? So many different hats.
Yes.
So many different hats too. So out of all of it, what would you say was the most difficult part of that whole experience?
I'll say the most difficult part was literally watching him go through the treatment and the pain and the sickness itself that even the treatment gave him. It made me feel so helpless because I wished I could have taken that away from him. And there's not enough words or, I just wanted to just hold him, but that was literally the hardest part about his journey was the whole, I wish I could take it away from him.
Right. And I can, it's weird that you're on this show today because I see this, my own father is currently in a stroke unit.
Okay.
And obviously we're in the middle of COVID, so visiting hours aren't as, we can only have one person for 1 hour per day, and to go in and, like I say, to see them in that position and not being able to just take it all away and get them back is incredible. But as difficult as it's been for me, not that, I'd like more time, but I only get 1 hour. So I cannot even begin to imagine how difficult it would have been for you to deal with literally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So, I have to just, I'm in awe, I would say, Ashley, because when it is somebody like you say, I can understand, and hats off to nurses, any kind of caregivers when they're in the industry. What an amazing job. I mean, the nurses there are just absolutely been so amazing. But again, just like you just said, they do get to, and they must have to have some way of actually switching off emotionally, because you wouldn't survive it. You wouldn't survive it for a whole career. But they do get time out. Whereas, I'm in awe, really, Ashley, for you to have to deal with that the whole time with somebody that, you're expecting to spend the rest of your life with. Absolutely phenomenal.
Yes. I call myself on this grief journey as well, because I lost my dad when I was 25. So it'll be about 10 years ago this year. And then I'm shifting into finding someone that I want to spend the rest of my life with, my forever with. And 2 months into our engagement, we're hit with this cancer diagnosis. And I'm just like, really, God? Like, what? Yeah. What else? Like, so, and I've learned to not ask that question. So, no. But, so then I'm having to navigate a different kind of grief, right? So, the grief that I experienced with my caregiving journey was the grief of a life that I had pictured in my head was going to be different, was going to be gone. Mm-hmm. So, cancer and radiation, major surgeries, they take a lot out of a person. And if you're having to do that multiple times, even, you're sucking more and more life out of them. I thank God for the treatments. Don't get me wrong. I thank God for the advances in medicine, but they have their consequences as well. But I don't think we would be here without that and God, and the tenacity that my husband has. So,
wow.
I also forgot to mention, not only was I his caregiver, but I was also our wedding planner along the way, because he refused to postpone our wedding.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. We had set our date for our wedding, and I was like, well, you're going through all this treatment, like maybe we should push it out an extra year ahead so that you can rest up when we get through all this treatment, all this stuff. And he was like, oh, absolutely not. Like, I want to do it now. When we set the date, this is the only reason why I'm going through all the chemo and the radiation. So I was afraid if I had pushed it further, he may not have wanted to keep progressing like he was.
He had that something ahead of him to look forward, that hope, that whole, there you go. There's that little bit of woo-woo right there, isn't it, Ashley?
That's it.
To keep him going. We've all got to have something to strive for. But Ashley, don't they say that weddings or planning a wedding is possibly one of the most stressful, cortisol again, jobs you could do, and you took that on top of being a caregiver.
Yes. I mean, absolutely. So I'm having to plan our wedding mostly from the hospital while he's sitting in his chair. Thankfully, I was able to work from a computer, remotely. But then so I would sometimes have two laptops. I would have my work laptop and then my personal one, because I was using my personal one to talk to vendors, to reach out to, when can we set up a cake taste? And like, I want to hear this DJ and all the things that go with wedding planning. So I'm having to do the two things at the same time, because of course we have to pay the bills that are coming in from the vendor. So I'm having to work. And, so it was really stressful. And I think at times, even though I try not to show my stress or my anxiety, I think my husband could feed off of it. He felt it, and he would, just remind me, like, it's okay if we can't have XYZ. Like, obviously we know we're not going to be able to afford Beyonce and Jay-Z to come perform at our wedding. So, like.
Oh no.
So
cancel.
Yeah. He was very supportive in the process, and having his input, he enjoyed having an input in the wedding process. And we, even though he actually had a major surgery about 6 months before our wedding, because the tumor was just very aggressive. So like they would shrink it, but then it would come back. And like when it came back, it would double in size. So they had to do a surgery. And because what made his cancer rare was because it started in his nasal cavity. And so when it like doubled in size, it actually broke part of his skull bone. It broke into his eye cavity area and his nostril bone. So when they went in for that first surgery, they had to remove part of his nostril, a part of his skull bone, and his left eye. So I'm, watching him be wheeled back one way for his surgery and coming out a totally different way. And just that whole experience, I still knew I wanted to marry him, but it was just very traumatic. And that's just me as a caregiver. He had his whole own trauma to deal with because it was him,
Yeah.
But, we were, by the grace of God, able to get married on our wedding date. And it was not just a union of us two coming together to be married, but it was also a celebration that this guy is still here. Like, he is still breathing and dancing around like no one's business. But, it was hard. It was a hard time coming to that point. But I believe the wedding, like as we got closer to the wedding, that was like the peak of my caregiver burnout. Because I thought I was going, if someone flipped a switch, I might have gone crazier, because it was getting, as we got closer to the wedding, it was like I was climbing up this mountain. And if someone did one wrong thing, I might have exploded. But that's just what caregiver burnout does. If you don't,
that's a lot of that. It's a lot to take on. So, obviously, hindsight's a wonderful thing. So, for you looking back, what possibly were maybe the signs of how would somebody know that they're getting to that point and that maybe something needs to happen?
Sure. So, for me personally, I gained weight, and it's not because I was overeating, but I wasn't eating. And when I did, it might be one meal a day. So I'm overeating.
Well, I would say, just from my input, this is, in a way what I coach, going back to that one word, cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
The stress hormone, you were under so much stress. So yeah, I 100% agree. Nothing to do with what you're eating. When cortisol is present, your body is not going to burn the fat, so you are going to gain weight.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes, so from my outsider looking in, from what I know, this is another reason what, stress. Cortisol is such an incredible hormone that obviously we need in certain times. But as I've had discussions every week on totally different subjects, but the one thing comes up and you realize what an impact it actually can have on your life if it's sustained and it's there for too long. We're not designed to have cortisol in our system for too long. Ashley, you had how many months? How many months was that from the time you got the diagnosis to your wedding? How many months was that?
Oh, goodness. I mean, we're talking probably 18.
Right, that's 18 months of, again, I'm just going to hazard a guess, you had cortisol running through it present the whole time of that.
Yes.
So yeah, that had a knock-on effect to you physically.
Yep.
What other signs were there?
Just fatigue. I couldn't, even if I would drink an energy drink, I still couldn't catch any type of energy. Yeah, I made it through. I would push through, but it was just, I would go to sleep very, very sleepy, very tired. I'd also wake up the same way. So it was just an extreme fatigue. Mind was always racing because it's a lot of what ifs. For anyone that hears the word cancer, it's a what if, or what's next, or, I call it anxiety because every time he has a scan, I'm anxious. So I'm always worrying, which when I worry a lot, I break out in hives and ulcers. So my mind affects my body.
That is proof of the connection between mind and body. Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
Like you said that this, what you were going to talk about today, and you were giving the mental and the physical. There's definitely a little bit of woo-woo in there, by the way, but it's just, it's just absolute proof then that the stress and the anxiety was manifesting through you and coming out in a physical ailment. I mean, hives and ulcers.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much a sign that that's what's done that, right?
Right. Exactly. Your mental state can really, wreck your body and put you in the hospital. And that's when I, started to say, like, girl, you need to get yourself together, because if I end up in the hospital, who's going to take care of him? No, and nobody's going to be able to take care of him like I do. So that's when I had to crawl out of this negative space in my head, because it was affecting my physical so bad as well.
Right. But that was after 18 months. Is that what you're saying?
Right. And not even to mention some things that happened after our wedding, and more treatment, more surgery. And, so in all, he had about 3 years worth of treatment and surgeries combined, strung out over 3 years. So, I would say I probably peaked about halfway through with my caregiver burnout, but it wasn't until towards the end of my caregiver burnout where I was like, or my caregiving journey with him, I was like, I need to figure this out. Like, what can I do for me? I wish I would have had the tools that I have now at the beginning of my caregiving journey, but sometimes you just have to walk through things to learn, that pain to purpose thing, to learn and to help others, because it's not cute and it's not pretty. Burnout's just not.
No, it doesn't sound it. But isn't it? I mean, there you go. Isn't it interesting? You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? People, I'm sure, when they do embark on this, it wasn't an asked for journey, right? It's not anything that anybody wants, desires, but it is what it is. And you, especially, I shouldn't say especially as a woman, but it does you just get on and do and deal with it. However, so for you, it's lovely that you're now, you're almost giving back to try and share your experience so that you can help others. So, okay, what advice would you have given Ashley back in, what did you say, 2018? Was it
17?
So back in 2017, in the March, right at the beginning then, when you got the diagnosis, what would you tell Ashley back then?
Girl, go get some therapy because this is traumatic. Any kind of illness or disease, especially cancer, it can wreak havoc on the mind and body. And, schedule self-care. Take 3 to 5 minutes per day, whatever it is. You have to figure that out, what it is for you, because my self-care is going to be different than Karen's, than the next person. So, for me, what worked maybe 10 years ago doesn't work now. So, and that's always changing. Self-care can always be changing, and it's not always bubble baths and pedicures and manicures. Now, do I love those things? Absolutely. But I've had to work on starting small and building up. Writing became therapeutic for me. I wish I would have wrote more at the very beginning, but that's okay because I write now. But yeah, at the very beginning, I would have said, get some therapy, figure out what kind of self-care regimen that would look like, even starting off with a couple minutes and writing my feelings and my thoughts down.
Right. Journaling. Now, it does come up quite a lot. And I don't know what it is, but this word self-care, again, I don't know whether it comes from maybe we've been brought up to believe that self-care is a luxury, right?
Yes.
And that it's, only for certain people, or, and that's, or maybe that we can't spend time on self-care because everybody else has got to come first. Whereas if you're going to burn out, if Ashley's not going to get enough self-care, she's not going to be around. 30. I mean, I'm quite horrified at that statistic. I have to say, Ashley, that's quite frightening. But that's a real life stat. So actually, if you don't get the self-care, then like you say, who's going to be the caregiver if you're not around anymore? And that is the truth of it, the crux of it, to keep you going and to reduce cortisol so that you can keep going. Yeah, self-care, like you say, it doesn't have to be 2 hours having a massage and a spa, going for a spa day. It could be just 5 minutes walk in a park, getting some, it's not looking pretty outside at the moment in London at the moment, but if you can get out in some sunshine, get some vitamin D as well, that's going to work.
Right.
As much as being spot. But isn't it strange that maybe not everyone, but I think a lot of women almost feel guilt at the idea of, how dare we take out a certain amount of time for self-care for us, because you've got all these things going on. But here you're saying it really is actually essential moving forwards.
It's absolutely what you should do. And don't feel bad about it. I have a caregiver support group on Facebook, and it's called Caring for the Caregiver. Treat yourself, because we should. We have to. It's a necessity. No matter if it's 3 minutes, 3 hours, or a 3-day weekend holiday away somewhere. Like, we all deserve to show ourselves love. We have to fill our own cup so that we can fill up others. If I don't take care of my body, I can't take care of my husband's body.
And there you go. That is it, isn't it? So it is such an important thing. So what else could you help people? So you run a group already to support other caregivers. What else is it that you do, Ashley?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, Timeless Dream Events was born out of my pain, and I just offer support and help with any type of event that is needed. I'll help anybody, but the basis of my vision and my help is for my fellow caregiver, and just they come to me to help plan, celebration of life, because I understand that whole process. They come to me to help with their wedding because uncle or grandpa or dad or mom isn't. We don't know what's going to happen, so we have to get married now or within, a couple months. Or, I understand that situation because I was planning a wedding with and for someone that I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to walk down the aisle to. So I understand and I know these feelings. And then that's also what propelled me to write my story, to help those that may feel like they are alone, because oftentimes we can feel lonely. We're on this little island all by ourselves, but I want to let others know that you're truly not alone. There are others out there like you. I remember when I was 31 years old when my husband was diagnosed. I didn't know what a caregiver was. I didn't know what that looked like. No one else my age was going through those things. So that's
why it shouldn't be.
Yeah,
and shouldn't be. And shouldn't be. And so because I could imagine that, like you said a lot earlier, something about you do sort of ask the question, even though you stopped yourself and said, I don't ask that question anymore. But why me? Why me? How did you overcome that victim mentality, which I can imagine would be a totally natural human response to this, because why me? So how did you overcome that, and how would you help others to overcome that, or what would you say?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I am a big believer in coaches. Like I'm a big believer in investing in myself, in coaches, anything or anyone that will help me get to the next level of Ashley. What will help me get to the next level to be better than what I am now? So, I was kind of stuck in this rut. In March of 2020, right before pandemic hit the world, my husband was pronounced cancer-free.
Yay!
Yes. So 3 long years. It was almost the same exact date when he was diagnosed as when they pronounced him cancer-free. And then obviously, thrilled, overjoyed. But I kind of found myself in this rut because I had put all of me into him. And now that I'm not having to run him back and forth to doctor's visits, to chemo, to radiation every day, 5 days a week, I was just like, well, what am I supposed to do now? What is Ashley doing with her life? And I didn't know. So I invested in myself. I got a business coach to help coach me along. And that's how I changed my mindset from, this whole victim to I'm a victor. And I needed someone to point that out to me, to make me realize, girl, all the things you've been through, but you're here and you're on top. Really, you're on top and you don't even realize it. So, just changing my whole mindset. And again, it's not an overnight process, that takes a while. and just kind of working through what makes you tick. You know, what are your passions? What do you like to do? What are your dislikes? What are your pain points? And it's just this beautiful, you know, work of art, this masterpiece that came out of it. Even though at first I didn't want to talk about my pain points, I didn't want to share what I thought was embarrassing, but working through it and sharing it, so many people have, you know, responded so positively and saying, I'm so glad that you shared. Now I feel more compelled to share my story. And to me, that's the greatest gift, that other people feel empowered by my story to want to share theirs.
Brilliant. And there you go, isn't it? Yeah, we don't have to be. Wonder where it comes from. We've been almost brought up to believe that we do have to put on this brave face 24/7, and being vulnerable is a weakness, when actually it's because that's where growth comes from, right?
Absolutely. I 100% believe that's where growth comes from, and being vulnerable, because
and honest with ourselves over our feelings about certain things, and sharing it. So you're right that, you know, so many people will, and I'm sure, have you noticed, so with your experience, have you noticed a change? I mean, I don't know what things are like over there in Ohio, but for us here, I would have thought people having to go through the experience that you've thrived, actually. You've not just survived it, you've thrived it. You married him, everything's good, and he's got the all clear. So for some, and I know of people that are very, very sadly going through these processes throughout this COVID lockdown. So when people are feeling like they are on their own, even more so this last year, has that been the same experience for you over there?
You know, it's totally different. You know, I didn't have to care for him through a pandemic. I did have to care for my grandfather, though, through this last portion of the pandemic. So I do see a glimpse into what some caregivers are going through now. You know, it's hard because, like you mentioned with your father, like you can only go in to a certain point, or you can only be around them 1 hour, or it's only one person that day that's allowed to see them. There are still some nursing home facilities that are shut down, so they're not even able to see their loved ones. So, you know, it's a different dynamic. It adds a whole bunch of more stress because, and I've said this before to a friend or family member, I can't remember, but I told them I'm not happy that my husband had to go through his treatment, but I'm glad that it wasn't during the pandemic, because the way that my husband is, if I wasn't sitting right beside him, encouraging him and telling him, like, okay, this is why we have to do this so that we can, you've got to survive. All right. We got to get you to the all clear. He probably wouldn't have taken the drugs because of how sick it made him. If I wouldn't have been able to sit beside him, holding his hand, encouraging him, he probably wouldn't have taken the drugs and the radiation. So it adds a whole nother stress level, which, you know, I can see and I sympathize with.
Yeah, it's I mean, obviously it's difficult for anybody going through that, but in different areas, in different countries, obviously everybody's got their own thing that's going on, and I just I just hope we are coming to the end of it all. So what inspired you to then actually, so when did you actually decide to actually write the book? had you made the decision to write the book when you had started writing, or had you started journaling and then later on decided you're going to create a book from that?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. May of 2020, so May of last year, at the beginning of May, I started like journaling. And then at the end of May, I quit. I said, I don't have time for this. Like, I'm done. And I put it to the side. It wasn't until I was talking to a fellow caregiver that I was writing. I had started writing a book. And she said, oh, I'm about halfway done writing mine. And I was like, all right, really? Like, I have maybe 2 chapters worth, and that's it. And, she was just so excited about her writing process. She had a writing coach and editor that was helping her, bringing out, this author that she didn't even know she had in her heart and her soul. And I was like, well, let me talk to her. I would be willing to give it a shot. Who knows? Obviously what I was trying to do on my own wasn't working because I had put it to the side. So, within our first meeting with this writing coach, I just knew I had to have her in my life because she was getting stories out of me that even my business coach hadn't. So it was getting even more onion layers peeled back. So throughout that process, I started writing again, and towards the end of August, and middle of September is when I started like really hitting it hard, and out came this beautiful book, Lost, Travel, Found, and it's just this combination of my love for my dad, my husband, and most importantly, myself. Because I can truly say I love me now, Yeah,
fantastic. And where can people buy this? Is it on can they get it on Amazon or where?
Amazon, Target, Barnes and Noble's websites. But yeah, absolutely. And because I have traveled throughout the world to over 50 countries, I have a lot of friends overseas, internationally, that have been buying the book, especially there in Europe. So it's like it's over there. So I'm super excited. A lot of my international friends are probably going to see themselves in the book because of the lessons that I've learned by not just staying in my state, just not by staying in my city. I've gone out and been able to experience different cultures, different people. All the delicious food I've been able to eat has led me to different points in my life and reflections. So a lot of my friends have been able to purchase that way on Amazon, which they've been enjoying. So
brilliant. And you say it was therapeutic. How was it? Sort of, I don't know. I suppose you've now gone full closure. You've gone full circle, right? So has it sort of? I can imagine it being a huge relief. I suppose getting all out on paper. But how else would you say you've really benefited from? Yeah, getting it out there.
Yeah, it was therapeutic because I was able to talk about my feelings, and it was easier to talk it out with the paper versus maybe another person. Because then you might have a feeling of, well, is this person thinking I'm crazy? Or, but so it was nice to meet my thoughts to paper. And as I kept writing, I would start with 3 to 5 minutes. And then I would want 10. Then I would want an hour. And, it got to be more free flowing and exciting for me to write. And just talking certain stories out with my writing coach, and not thinking that they were going to end up in the book. I'm just having a free flowing conversation about my dad or about one time in the hospital or, buying my wedding dress and all these things that I was saying, she would say, hold on, write that down because you're going to expand upon that and it's going to go in the book. I'm like, no, I don't want that, So I became more vulnerable and open. And as I kept writing about certain things, it was like a weight kept lifting off of my shoulders and my heart was becoming lighter. And I've started to consider myself the author of hope because that's what has gotten me through.
Love it.
My faith.
Love it. Yeah. Absolutely love it. And there you go. It's you just said there, you just feel lighter. Your heart feels lighter. I'm trying to think, was it last week we were talking about the fact that, when we keep everything bottled up, it's not healthy, is it? But we again, it's this. Well, I know over here, the British, stiff upper lip and all that. We've got to, we can't show our emotions. We've got to be strong and brave. And so all that bottling of those emotions is like you said it quite early on that you actually got hives and ulcers. It has to, the mind-body connection is so strong that it's going to manifest somehow. It's going to come out somehow.
Right.
And that the more when you do just, I can imagine the relief. It is like therapy, right? It's just releasing it all, letting it all go. Amazing. So I know you put, so I'm going to need to ask you this. Who's your hero, Ashley?
My hero, I have several, but for time's sake, I would say my dad and my husband. My dad instilled in me as a little girl to never give up on my dreams and to keep chasing them until I reach them. Also, as part of that, figuring out your purpose in life and then everything will fall into place, which I fully believe has happened. And then, watching my husband through his cancer fight and just the tenacity and strength he had and just being in awe of him. And those are my two biggest heroes, I'd say.
And I'm sure that you are his. I mean, how fantastic that you were there throughout that journey. Unfortunately, not everyone has somebody as strong and as vibrant and as inspirational as you to have. Can you be rented out, Ashley? No.
Well,
that just goes to show that it really does go a long way to have somebody that's got your back, that is going to be there to hold your hand at times. Like you say, for some people, sometimes the treatment seems, worse than the actual issue, right? But you've got to do it. You've got to do it to become healthy. So you're right. I've heard this a lot. For some people, they don't even want to go through the treatment, but they've got somebody that's, got them by the hand, giving them hope, inspiring them, that you're here and that you're going to survive this together. And of course, he knew that he had this wedding that he's got to be at. Yeah, he's got to be at to keep him going. So, and this is why, caregivers, absolutely, they're not given enough, acknowledgement for actually what they do. And for somebody who it is somebody that's, that they're attached to, so it is a 24/7 7-day-a-week job.
Mm-hmm.
There is no, and not putting that down, because anybody who is in the caring industry, again, what a job. And thanks to every single one of them for going down that route, because it must be a very emotionally draining. So the things that you have to ground you. So you had self-care. What were your top self-care items then, Ashley? What were your favorites?
My favorite forms of self-care now are getting pedicures, listening to music, and going for walks.
There you go. That's come up again. We had had a guy we were speaking to about going out in nature and what that actually does for you. It's totally underestimated, right?
Yeah.
But actually just getting out, because we are so bombarded. Like say, you had 2 laptops, right? You know, most people, thank goodness, I've only got the one. So having to deal with 2, that's even more. But, you know, we're attached to our phone. So all this, even the EMF, the radiation, that's no good for us constantly.
Right.
Or constantly watching the TV. To actually just go back to nature for a moment and quieten the mind and just
rest in your mind
is huge, right?
Yeah.
This is why so many people struggle even with meditation, because they're just so not used to it. They're so up in their heads fast. Like you said earlier that there was so much chitter chatter really going on, because it's
absolutely
all the scenarios, which again is human nature. We don't want to be doing that, but it's natural because you're going to be doing that.
Yeah.
But actually quieten the mind, right?
Right. And people are going to do that because they don't know any better. You know, it's always like the wheel, like on your car that's turning really fast, but it's going nowhere until you realize what is going to work for you. Like you just have to figure out what's going to work for you. No one can tell you any different.
There's not one size fits all, right? You said it earlier. What's right for you? It would be, my idea of self-care would be something different. And yes, some people find it very difficult to just meditate. So maybe for them it would be better to just go for a walk then. Just leave your phone in the car.
Yeah.
And just go for a walk, right?
Yep, exactly. But you'll figure that out.
There you go.
It's trial and error.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Ashley. So if any of the listeners would like to get in contact with you, do you have a website?
Absolutely. So it is www.timelessdreamevents.com, and you can browse through all the beautiful pictures of weddings and events I've done and read more about my story with my husband and I and what led to Timeless Dream Events. You can look. There's actually a link to behind the scenes video of how and why I came to write Lost Travel Found is on my website as well. So please visit. I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Timeless Dream Events as well. So yeah, you can find me almost in all the places.
Thank you so much. So yeah, to the listeners on Midwave, I hope you got that. There will be on the website and on the podcast, there will be information down below with links to get in contact with Ashley. So yeah, once again, I really do take my hat off to you. I can totally understand what an immense job that is, mentally, physically, but spiritually too. It's
absolutely
a very, very, very demanding job, and I'm so grateful that it all ended well, right?
Yes.
It ended on a positive note, and I'm so glad that it's got the all clear. So that's amazing news. So yeah, thank you so much for your time, Ashley.
Absolutely.
And to the listeners, I will be back next Monday with a Coffee with Karen at 2:00. Thank you for listening.
Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.